the PowerPoint and some resources that you will be sent as well. So we want you, as I said, to have an understanding of where the transition process, to learn ways to develop self-advocacy skills and self-determination skills in your young adults, and then also to understand how to utilize this guide. So why is transition important? It's really important for families and parents to understand that transition is the end of a system of entitlement and the beginning of a system of eligibility. So, what does that mean? All of our kids are entitled to a free and appropriate public education. However, when they leave the school district, whether that's at 18 or 21, they have to be deemed eligible for any adult services, meaning that there are applications for different services, whether it's the Division of Developmental Disabilities, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, whatever it may be. They have to be deemed eligible for those services. But while they're in school, they are entitled to those services. So that's a big change. And we want families to understand that. So, what exactly is transition? This is taken directly from the New Jersey Special Education Administrative Code. And what it says is that transition is a coordinated set of activities for a student designed, and this is really important, within an outcome-oriented process. So we're working towards an outcome that promotes movement from school to whatever their post-school activities will be. And that can include post-secondary education, vocational training, integrated employment, and also supported employment, continuing and adult education, adult services, independent living, or community participation. So that's what transition is within our New Jersey Administrative Code. So then what are the services within transition? So they include instruction, related services, which is our physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, transportation, community experiences, employment, and other post-school adult living objectives, activities of daily living, and functional vocational assessments. And I'm going to go into that further a little more further in the PowerPoint. So who's eligible for transition services? All students with disabilities are eligible for these services. Understanding that within the IEP, there is a transition plan. So I've worked with many parents throughout the years where they've been aware that their student has an IEP, but had no idea of the understanding of what's within the IEP. So it's really important as parents that you understand all the components within the IEP. One of those components is a transition plan. You know, we get phone calls from families a lot in the spring where a parent will say, my son is 18 and the school district thinks that my son is leaving school in June. I think my son should stay in school till they're 21 years old. And the first thing that we ask them will be, what does your transition plan say? Because I can guarantee you that for the 4 years that they were in transition, that plan most likely said Johnny was graduating at 18. So it's really important that you go home, take out your IEP, that's your child's IEP, and look at that transition plan. Because once a student accepts a diploma, the right to special education and related service ends. So, you know, we see students have the right, even if they're staying in school till 21, to participate in all graduation activities with their non-disabled peers. Now, my son stayed in school till he was 21. However, he went to prom, he walked through graduation, he did all the graduation activities, but he did not receive a diploma in hand. Once a student receives a diploma in hand, the school district is finished with their obligations. So that's really important to understand. So, and again, I want to call your attention to the page numbers on the bottom right so that if you are looking at the guide or when you do, you know that this is what's in the page sections. What is the parent's role in transition planning? The parent's most important role that a parent can do in transition planning is to help to teach skills and to encourage independence. Now, I will say this all the time to families, you cannot rely solely on your school district to teach your child everything. Meaning, think about everything you do for your child at home because the idea is to make them as independent adults, young adults, as possible. So, if you think about everything you do for your child, even make a running list. Look at that list then and think, what can I do to help my child be able to do that skill on their own without me? Because for me, I always felt like I needed to work towards eliminating me from that area. So, for instance, if your child and a lot of these examples I give are in normal worlds because right now things are a little different. But if your child or your young adult, you make their lunch and pack that up to send to school and every day, that's something that maybe you can work on to make your child more independent in that area. So think about, do you wake your young adult up every day to go to school? So how can we work towards independence where they can maybe, they have the Amazon Echo where they can communicate and say, Alexa, set my alarm. Alexa, turn the alarm off. And that's making them more independent. So think about what you do for them and how you can work towards independence in those areas. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to understand how to do that on their own. There are professionals at the school district who should be able to help you in that area. Many school districts have on staff a behaviorist and somebody that can help you to work on those skills at home. Now, we also want to include always the student in any goal setting or decisions for their future. It's important for us to understand as parents that this is their future, not ours. So we want to include them in the decision making as much as possible. And then we want to support their decisions when they do make them. For instance, I have a colleague whose son has a physical disability and he requires using braces to walk. And if you ask him what he wants to do when he leaves school, he will tell you that he wants to be a professional basketball player. But we, as the adults, realize that that's not a realistic goal for him. However, we don't want to squash that goal. We want to take whatever his interests are in basketball and utilize that in an area where he can have adult um, position, whether it's employment or working in a sporting goods store or working at a gym, like a JCC type of area where he is a maybe an assistant or whatever it may be, but taking that love of basketball and using that for some future employment. And then what is our students' role in this process? It's really important that we as family members begin our child's journey towards self-advocacy. And we do that initially by talking to them about their disability. As a parent, I understand that we want to protect our children. And sometimes it's scary to talk to them about the fact that they have a disability. And I understand that. But in order for them to build self-advocacy skills, they need to understand themselves and their disability. So it could be as easy as talking to them about what their strengths are and their needs are. Because the more we can build that, the more productive and adults they will be, and the more they'll understand how to ask for what they need. So that is a really important step. And I'm going to show you at the end our YouTube channel because we have lots of recorded webinars where we go into more detail how to gain assistance in doing that. Also, it's important for them when they understand their disability, they understand the importance of disclosing their disability. So, if your student and your young adult is able to go to college, and let's say they've received accommodations and services in school that they were very successful with, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, they can go to the disability service office at the college or the university and request accommodations and modifications there. There are no IEPs in college. The student has to go to that office and request those accommodations and modifications. And if they don't understand their disability or that they even have a disability, they'll never be able to do that. And also, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you can request accommodations in the workplace. But again, you need to understand what your strengths and needs are in order to ask for them. You know, parents, colleges do not want to hear from a parent. They want to hear from the young adult. So it's important that they understand that, and also that they understand how to use their voice. So I already talked about this because I kind of get ahead of myself, but they should also be invited to every meeting. I will talk a little later about when the age that transition actually begins, but we feel that students should be invited to IEP meetings as early as kindergarten, because again, that will help build their self-advocacy skills. It's really important that our young kids understand that we go to a meeting yearly on their behalf. This is their meeting. This is their education, and this is their future, and they need to be involved in it. I do a workshop around student-led IEPs. It's really important that not only do they go to those meetings, that they participate, and it can be as small as them reading off a piece of paper and as detailed as them actually developing a PowerPoint and presenting during that IEP meeting. So it's really important that we involve them in that, and that we also involve them in the goal setting for their future. It's like anybody, when they're involved in the goal setting, they take ownership of it, and it's almost it's easier for them to actually accomplish it. And now, if you're saying to me, if you're thinking to yourself right now, my student has my young adult has no advocacy skills at all, then that's a trigger for you at the next to call an IEP meeting to talk to them about the fact that now we need to develop goals for the IEP so that they are capable of being self advocates. So it's really, parents should be going to those IEP meetings with a list of things that they feel that their student needs or that they're lacking, so that they can talk about goal setting, and also to include the young person in that. So transition, based on our New Jersey Special Education Administrative Code, I read you the definition of transition. Transition begins at the age of 14. And at 14, we're going to start with a statement of transition planning. I'm going to show you in a minute what that will look like. And then at age 16, we're going to begin coordinating activities and strategies to get to whatever the goal is after high school. But again, for those of you who have students that are under the age of 14, so at 14, that's when transition begins. And the law says at that point that students must be invited to IEP meetings starting at age 14. But as I said, for those of you with students under 14, they should be coming to the meeting anyway. It doesn't have to be for the whole meeting. Maybe it's just for a portion of the meeting, depending on their age, but they should be going to that meeting for a period of time, because they need to understand that those meetings are taking place. And if you need to, you can make the school district aware that this is part of their advocacy building. So every school district uses a different type of IEP program. So your transition plan may not look exactly like this, but it should have this information. At the top of this, it says, beginning with the IEP in place for the school year when the student will turn 14. So understand if you have a 13-year-old and you have an IEP meeting in May and they're going to be 14 in September, that's when their transition plan begins. So, if appropriate, you're going to develop the long range educational plan for the student's future. So, at this point is when we're going to start talking about what is Johnny doing after high school? Is he going to go to college? Is he going to go directly to employment at age 18? Or is there a chance that he's going to stay in school till he's 21? So, based on that, we're going to then um, identify his strengths, interests, and preferences, and we're going to start developing goals to help get us to that final outcome. So if he's going to go to college, obviously we're going to need to understand that within that IEP, we have to be sure that he takes all the correct courses that he needs to take for that, that he has to take whatever the entry level exams are for colleges and so on. If he's going to go to employment, we want to make sure at some point he gets job sampling. We're going to talk about community participation, independent living. Are there some needs around that we notice that he can't do certain things? So we need to think about what we need to put in based on that. So we're also going to talk about the course of study, and then we're going to talk about related strategies or activities. And then when he turns 16, so this says beginning with the IEP in place for the school year when the student turns 16, if appropriate, complete the following multi-year plan for promoting movement from school to the student's desired post-school goals. The student's needs, strengths, interests, preferences in each area, instruction, and so on, must be considered and responsibilities should be shared. So notice in this area, there's an area for the person who's actually responsible. So under instruction, somebody from the school district will be there, and then their name, and then there's a date that it's expected to be implemented. Same with related services, community experiences. So this is an interesting area. The school district is not going to go out into your community and find experiences for your young person. So it's really up to the parent or the caregiver to determine, okay, what in the community can my young person be involved in? Because, when you think about our life, we don't just, hopefully, we don't just go to work and come home and we have nothing else in our life, right? A lot of us will go out to dinner sometimes, and maybe we're involved in a book club, or, maybe we're in, we take exercise classes, whatever it may be. We make our lives well-rounded, and we want the same thing for our young adults. So if you have a young adult who loves to sing and they sang in chorus in high school, you can think, maybe we have a religious organization that has a choir that my son wants to be involved in. For instance, my son was a runner in high school. He was part of the track team. So I found an organization called Achilles International that helps people with disabilities run mainstream races with guides, and he runs races now, and that's an enjoyment of his. So we have to think outside the box to find that for our young people. That's not, so your name will be in that area where that is your responsibility. So this begins at 16. So all of this will be put in there. And also note, as I mentioned, we want to have goals and objectives in there for areas of need. And keep in mind the word measurable there. Goals must be measurable so that we can track progress. So if a goal just says Johnny will learn how to use the bus, that's not a real goal. That's just a statement. If we put in objectives and benchmarks where Johnny will learn how to go on the bus with support for a couple of months, and then go on the bus with support that fades back, and then go on the bus by himself, and so on. So if we break down that skill and we can track progress, that's a goal. Again, this is continued. So if Johnny's going to go into employment at age 18, we're going to have, he needs to sample jobs to determine what it is that he wants to do with regard to his employment. If we have adult living objectives, if and I say Johnny all the time because I have a son, it's just easier for me. But if Johnny needs to understand how to register to vote, or how to file, work on insurance, or whatever it may be with a anything that has to do with adult living and daily living. If Johnny needs to learn how to cook, or how to make a sandwich, or how to care for his clothes and how to do laundry, if that is a need, that should be in here, and it should be determined who the person is that's responsible for that. Now, if you have no idea what Johnny wants to do as far as work, there are assessments that can be taken, and that you can request that they do different assessments to help. There's a vocational evaluation assessment that can be done, a functional vocational evaluation, and other career assessments that can be facilitated by the school district if you're not sure what he wants to do. So you want to make sure that within the IEP, we're addressing the student's needs. We know what they're going to do after high school, whether it's to go to college, to go into employment, or if they stay till 21. Now, if they're staying till 21, um, during that 18 to 21 programming, some school districts have their own programs. Some school districts send the student out of district. In my case, my school district did not have a program. My son went a couple of towns over to an 18 to 21 transition program where they learned vocational skills, living skills. And the idea was that when he was done, he was going to go to employment. So if that's the case, then they again do not receive a diploma and they go right into that programming. But I get asked a lot about whether they could try certain college classes during that. That transition programming is individualized, just like your IEP is individualized. So if there's a chance that maybe Johnny could take some form of a college course, but you're not sure and we want to try it out, then you can sit at that IEP table, of which you as a family member are an equal member as the rest of the members of the IEP team, and discuss that this is something we want to try. So that plan, it's not cookie cutter. Just like the IEP, the transition plan is individualized as well. So again, here I'm mentioning that you can do different types of assessments: independent living assessment, career assessment, to determine what it is that Johnny's going to do after high school. Now, age of majority, as everyone is considered adult at age 18. And so what happens at age 18 is that all of the rights go from the parent over to the student. Districts will say to parents, you need to start looking into guardianship for your child. We want parents to understand that guardianship is not the only option. There's something that's called supported decision making, where that is where the person with the disability makes their own decisions with the support of someone, whether it's a parent or someone that they've deemed that they want to help them make their decisions. So that is an alternative to guardianship. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with that here, but you can read about it on this section. And then also on our YouTube channel, we have a 4-part series on supported decision making. The main thing I want you to go away with tonight is understanding that you do not have to seek guardianship. You may want to. It's a very personal decision based on your family and the young adult with a disability, but is not your only option. There's supported decision making. So what I will do is provide my email at the end, and if you want more information, I can get you that afterwards. We also want you to understand that transition is not just about what they're going to do after high school. There's also including healthcare in the transition IEP. So some of our students and our young people have health needs. Some of them are very complex health needs, but it's important, just like we want them to be independent in other areas of their life, we want them to be independent when it comes to healthcare as well. So if your young person takes medication, We want them to be able to do that on their own by themselves without you. And that may require putting a goal in the IEP for them to understand why and when they take that medication. It can also be as simple as when you take them to the doctor, they go up to the window and introduce themselves instead of you doing that. When the doctor has questions, he addresses them to the young adult, and then if need be, you can help with the answer. So we want to make them, again, as independent as possible with regard to their health care as well as all other areas. So again, we need to understand what our young person is going to do after high school and make sure that IEP has everything they need and addresses all their needs to get them to that end result, whether it's post-secondary education, employment, independent living. Also, we list transportation here, because depending on where you live in New Jersey, first of all, if your young person is not going to be able to drive, and think about the complex intellect that's required to be able to drive. Now, if they're not going to be able to drive, there are options. So are they going to use public transportation? If they are, we want to make sure that there's training within the IEP for that. I live in an area, there's also something called Access Link, which if they have a disability, they could be qualified to utilize that. However, Access Link does not go everywhere in the state. I live in a part of the state where I do not have Access Link here. So my son was taught how to use Uber. That was a goal in his IEP. And so because transportation can be a real barrier towards independence. So we need to really think outside the box on how, if they're going to work, how are they getting to work? Again, entitlement versus eligibility. They're entitled to an education, but they need to be eligible for adult services. Some are the Division for Vocational Rehabilitation. That is an agency that will help a young adult with a disability find employment. The parent needs to help the young adult register for DVR, and then there's a process that they will follow, and they can come to your IEP meeting the year before they leave school. So if they're leaving school at 18, they should come at 17 to make sure everything is in place for them to find a job for your young adult. If they're staying till 21, you want to register them at 19, and they will come to the IEP meeting. They were the one that helped my son find a job. So there's a process involved. Also, the next one is the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. If you have a young person with a visual impairment, that's a great organization to help with services. SILS is the Center for Independent Living. There's one in every county. They have a lot of great services for young adults. And then these are just youth advocacy organizations. So these are organizations made up of young adults and adults with that disability, and they have lots of different resources. ASAN is the Autism Self-Advocacy Network. Youth Move is for youth with mental health challenges. I is for youth with learning disabilities. CASA, which is actually called YASA now, Youth as Self-Advocates. They have a lot of wonderful resources. And this Real Transition Partners is a newer grant that we have now. It used to be called Reach for Transition. And we have lots of resources. I'll show you that in a minute on the website. So in conclusion, we want to make sure families understand you need to start planning early for your young adults transition. Keep all your evaluations and paperwork. You're going to need that for some adult service agencies. Also, be sure to always include your youth or young adult in all the decision making, and have high expectations. Never before years ago, did I think my son would be working? No. And he has employment with a job coach. So have high expectations for them. And remember that strong self-advocacy skills lead to improved outcomes. So I have some resources, but I don't know if you want to do questions and answers first, Beth.
Are you able to pop those resources into the chat?
So these are just two, just really fast. We have what we call a youth chat on Wednesdays from 3 to 3:30. It's run by a young man who's our youth coordinator, And it's really a safe place for youth in transition to go and meet with other youth. And every week, it's only for 30 minutes. We have a topic they discuss. Last week it was about being in this pandemic for a year and how everyone feels about that. He provides wonderful resources, and then afterwards we have one of our youth interns writes a blog based on the topic of that weekly youth chat. So these flyers are going to be in that resource link that I provide for you. But if you have a young person between the ages of 13 and 26, and you think they would benefit from meeting weekly with this group, I can tell you an adult ally. I attend, but my camera's off and I just listen if they need anything. It's a wonderful group and they really do. I mean, we find that the same young people come back every week. So it's wonderful. And then just very quickly on March 20th, we're having a transition conference. There's 2 tracks to it, an adult track and a youth track. The youth track is run by myself and that youth coordinator I mentioned. And we talk a lot about building their self-advocacy skills, running their own IEPs. And we collaborated with a school in Colorado where every young person with a disability runs their own IEP meeting. And they come and talk about what that's like. So I recommend that as well. And that flyer you have to register. That's also in that link. Okay.
These are incredible resources. You are an incredible resource.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us all of this information. If you want to send those flyers to me, I am happy to email them out
Wonderful.
to everyone on the call and to our listserv. If you're not on our listserv, feel free to email me directly. I'll pop my contact info up later so that we can get that information to you, because I do want to leave time to answer at least some of the questions that have been coming in.
Well, I'm ready, so go ahead.
Okay, good. So Dawn, any recommendations on how to help children begin to acknowledge their disability as the first step in taking ownership and independence and being a participant in the transition process at 14 or even earlier?
So I really do think it's as easy as talking about what they may struggle with. And and just pointing out that, and I know parents sometimes have a hard time actually saying the word or the title of their disability, like you have a learning disability or you have autism, but it's so it can be simplified to the point, and maybe that's something that happens as they get older. But when they're younger, it's just as easy as saying that, you struggle with math, or you have a hard time reading, but you're really good in math. And everybody has a strength and a weakness,
Mhm.
and a need or a weakness. And that's something that, you need extra help in, but that's okay because everyone needs help in something. So it's starting really for them understanding what their strengths and their needs are in a simple form. And then I think as they mature and they age, you can then get into, I had a friend whose son was in 5th grade when she finally said to him, you have something called autism. And he was on the higher end of the spectrum. And I'll remember this like it was yesterday. He literally said to her, wow, I thought there was really something wrong with me. Like, it was a relief for him to hear that because he knew he struggled. And I can guarantee you, so our students who are being pulled out for resource room or getting special attention on certain areas, they know something's going on. But unless we empower them with the words on what it is, or we talk to them about it, they think that, kids have a great way of thinking that something's wrong with them. If we talk about it, it kind of opens it up to, it's not a big deal. It's just something that we have to, we just need to know.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
it's really important to reduce the stigmas and
Yeah.
to invite the kids into the process as early as possible. Even
Mhm.
if they're only attending their IEP meeting for a few minutes and then they head back.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I agree. Thank you, Dawn. There are a couple questions related to advocacy, specifically peer advocacy, perhaps for teenagers that are beginning to go through this process. Do you want to just take a moment to talk about the services that SPAN offers for a minute? related to advocacy?
So we do a lot of work on helping young people build their self advocacy skills. So we just this last year hired a youth coordinator, and he's wonderful. We started that youth chat. He's involved in, we have a workshop that we just started last month called Youth Empowerment, where we talk about taking, understanding what you want to do in the future, and, understanding the process to get there. As far as, I mean, really, the self advocacy begins. There's a document that's going to be in the Google Drive that I'm going to give you, and it was developed by the Parent Center in Washington D.C., and it's different things that you can start working on with your all the way as early as kindergarten, to helping them make choices. So it's as simple as, when it's time to get dressed, laying two outfits out and letting them choose which one they want to wear, and then going from there. So if you watch the supported decision making
Mm.
webinar series, which I'll show you, it's on our YouTube channel. It's a 4-part series. The first part is building those self advocacy skills. And we do talk about that document. I mean, you look at it and you think, well, that's pretty simple, but it really does, because we want them to be what we call self-determined. We want them to be able to make these decisions on their own. And it can start as early as kindergarten, but for those of you whose kids are maybe a little bit older, middle school, and you think, well, I didn't do that before, now what do I do? You can start now. It's never too late to start that process. Um, it's empowering them. Like I said, when you start inviting them to the meetings and asking them what's working and what's not working. Johnny, why do you keep getting late? You're late constantly to math class. Well, maybe Johnny has ADHD, and walking through the hallway with all those people is so distracting for him, he can never get to class on time. So, talking about it with him and thinking, well, how about if we let you leave class a minute before, where you're walking in the hallway by yourself, and then you can get to class, and you'll get there on time. Do you think that would be helpful? And talking to them, like, involving them like they should be. It's their schooling, it's their life. So I do think that the earlier we can begin to include them in decision making, the better.
Yeah, it's so important for them to be involved in the process. I agree. Thank you, Dawn. There have been a few questions about officially starting the transition process. Um, we can start thinking about this at any point, but the transition planning begins at age 14.
Right.
And each document for each district is going to look different.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to add to that, just in terms of beginning the planning?
Yeah, so I always tell parents that you should start learning about something 5 years before it's going to happen, because, like, there may be, especially if you have a younger student, there may be something that I just talked to you about that totally went over your head, and or you know what I said, but it didn't sink in, and maybe you want to attend another transition workshop. So it may take a while for you to truly understand it. So start as early as possible. When we were doing workshops in the community, I was always looking for a host site. And a lot of times I would reach out to a K-8 school and say, well, I have a transition workshop. And oh, we're only K-8. We don't need that. Well, yeah. If your child's in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, you need to start understanding what transition is, because there's a lot. So it does legally begin at 14, the year the child's turning 14. But start learning as much as you can because I can tell you, like, I work at Span, and I knew a lot, but when you're in the thick of it, there's a lot. So you want to know, and you want to have that information, as much information as you can beforehand.
Absolutely. And it's so important to plan transition looking at the whole person,
Mhm.
the educational components. So
Right.
it's very important that parents advocate for that holistic approach during their IEP and their meetings and start to consider those things early.
Right.
Absolutely. Here's an interesting question. Since the pandemic, our young adult has not received job training, CBI. The year has been somewhat lost. Do you want to speak for a moment about compensatory?
So, what I'll do is I'll talk about where I can send you for resources on that and information on it. So yes, I understand that. My son aged out during the quarantine, so it was a very stressful time. So and I was going to fight for an extra year, and look what that extra year would have been. So it was better that he left in June and didn't stay for another year. But I understand that a lot of our young people are missing out on services. So if you go to our website, and actually what I'm going to do is provide you with a flyer that we did, and a link to a webinar
Fantastic.
that we did, and then you can send that out. I'm going to send you a ton of stuff tomorrow, so you can send that out, because early on in the quarantine, I want to say it was like maybe even April or May of last year, we did a webinar exactly on this topic, of how you can request compensatory services. So yes, it's possible. I feel really bad for all of our young people who should have received all those services this year and weren't able to. So there is recourse. So I will provide that to Beth, and she'll send that out to you, and I'll guide you to where that is on our website as well.
Thank you. Yeah, that's going to be a decision that each family is going to have to consider with their districts during this really crazy time in
Yeah.
history.
Yep. Yep.
We're all doing our best. Thank
Yeah.
So before we get to the end, I do want to be able to take at least one or two more questions. I think this is a really important one. Can DVRS be accessed without attending the public school system? How can you reach out to DVRS?
Yeah, DVR does not have anything to do with the school district,
Mhm.
although the district may provide you with contact information for it. You can reach out to them on your own. So there's one in every county, an office in every county. Reach out to them, and you're going to apply, register your young person. And then what happens is you register them, then they contact you. You have to go to an information meeting. This is what happened when I did it 2 years ago, but I know it hasn't deviated too much from it. You go to an information session, you get assigned I don't know if they call them case person. You have to go back and meet with them, and then you're going to talk to them about what it is. If your son is, they're going to be working, your son or daughter want to go to work, and then they will come to your last IEP meeting. Now, if you're saying that you're not in school or public school or whatever it may be, you still the same process. So if they don't come to an IEP meeting, then they don't come to a meeting, but you can still work with them to find employment for your young person. But again, it's one of those things where they have to be deemed eligible. So you want to register them.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn. Yeah, so much of this, the line between district responsibility and parent responsibility at this age somewhat is gray, depending on, the circumstance and what you're looking for. And I know you guys have great information on your website about that. So I keep referring people back because it's an incredible wealth of information.
Right, there is, and like I do want to mention too, I did a transition fair once where a gentleman came over to the table, and I started chatting with him, and he said he had a 22-year-old, I believe, and I said, "So what's he doing?" And he said, "Nothing." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Because my district never referred me to DDD." That is not Your district is not going to refer you to the Division of Developmental Disabilities. They may give you the contact information, but they aren't going to. If your young person is going to be eligible for services from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, so eligible meaning they have a developmental disability and they meet the criteria, you have to do the application process. You fill out the application, then eventually they send you an assessment that needs to be completed to determine, once he's deemed eligible, to determine his level of need. So that is something, again, in that transition plan where you're going, as the caregiver, you're going to have to do that registration process.
Mhm. And on that note, Dawn, I think this is also a really important question. Where do parents and caregivers begin with accessing available services post high school? There's so much out there. There's so much available. Where do people look to begin if the district, isn't particularly guiding them?
Span.
Hmm.
I mean, they should be based on your what the student is going to be doing after high school. So if they're not going to go to college and they're not going to go directly to work at age 18, are they staying until 21? And that's a
Hmm.
decision that's made at that IEP table. If they're staying until 21, most likely they will require services from the Division of Developmental Disability, and that will be
Hmm.
discussed at the table. Now, if it's not, then I highly recommend that you attend like our transition conference, or you can go to our website for information, go onto the YouTube channel for some videos, because then, yeah, you'll have to seek that out yourself. But I do want to mention that. So, we talked about the process for DDD. I don't go into all of that too much during this because it's a little complicated, but in order to have services from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, you need Medicaid. The young person
Hmm.
needs Medicaid because they're funded through Medicaid. So first at age 18, you have to apply for Medicaid. All of that, again, it's up to the parent to really learn about it so that they can do that. And so that's what we're here for, to help you understand that process.
Thank you, Dawn. I constantly refer people to your website for just that reason. The timelines are difficult to interpret, the processes are challenging, and I really just encourage everybody on the call to check out the SPAN website. Everything is neatly sorted out by age or by interest. It's a very easy to navigate website, and there are incredible resources there. And if not, you can call SPAN directly and speak with someone. It's just, they are wonderful. I can't
Right.
say enough good things about SPAN as a resource, that you truly are a resource network. Um,
Thank you. And yes, thank you for mentioning that,
Fantastic.
Beth, because if you have a question and you need help, call our 800 number or the 973 number and ask to speak to a technical assistant. That's what they're there for. They will take your information down and someone will call you back and say, I don't know what to do. And they
Mhm.
will guide you. Or you need information after you went to a meeting and you don't understand what was said. They will go through your IEP for you. So they're there and they've always been there. We did not stop doing that even when everybody was quarantined.
Mhm.
So yes, thank you for reminding me to mention that.
Yeah,
The
if
website has,
anything,
yes. No, so I just want to very quickly, I'm just going to show you brief. Do we have time for the website? I'm
yes,
just going to
please.
briefly
It's
show
so
it.
important.
Okay. And then I just want to also show you the, oh wait, yeah, let me go back.
Hang
So,
with us. We may go a few minutes over.
okay, here we go. Oh, that's the YouTube. Oh, let me show you that first, the YouTube channel. Um, So I highly recommend people subscribe to our YouTube channel because there are so many resources. See here where it says COVID-19 resources. That's This is the webinar, um, graduation for students with
Mhm.
disabilities during COVID-19. That's the webinar I'm going to give you the link to, because that is our director and she talks specifically about compensatory services in this video. This is also a webinar we did with Renee Zamlut, who's an advocate. And she talks about services at home virtually learning and what your rights are. And under down here where it says transition to adulthood, if you click on that, these are where all my webinars are, transition webinars. And the one that I told you about, supported decision making, it's a 4-part series. Part 1 is here, skill building to independence. That's part 1. And then there's 2, 3, and 4. I also did a series on disability and sexuality, which was very good as well. So really, there's so many good resources here. Please, and you can go ahead and subscribe, and then if you hit the bell, you'll be notified when we add new webinars. and new recordings. There's a ton of information there. And then the website is right here. If you go, we do a ton of virtual workshops. If you're looking for a workshop or you want to get more information on a workshop, they're in the process of changing the website. So what they usually had here is not here. Let me see if I go home. I think this is home. Oh no, that's looking I don't know. Yeah, whoops. Okay, here. Okay, here. So if you see this COVID-19 link right here, there's a ton of resources there. And then if you hit events calendar, this will tell you every workshop we're doing. I think they have them up all the way through the middle of April. And you could attend as many, they're free. You can attend as many of them. The same workshop, it's every month we do these. So I do this transition workshop every month. You can come back as many times as you need to. So that's all there, and you just click on it and you can register. So
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
there's so much information here that please check it out, because really we don't want any parent not to know where to go for help. I mean, that's the bottom line. So
yeah. Please go check out their website. The resources are absolutely incredible. They're easy to digest. They're parent friendly. The videos are fantastic. I can't encourage you enough to check out that website. Thank you, Dawn. This was just an incredible series, and you have given us so much information to think about and to help us move along this process with transition. So thank you for that.
it's my pleasure. And I will send you all that information that you can send out tomorrow.
Thank you, Dawn. I will compile that and get that out to everyone.
Wonderful.
So thank you. If you have enjoyed our programming and learned something, if you'd like to help support our inclusion programs at the JCC, we do have 2 ways that you can help support us. We have a new text to donate feature. Please text YIJ to 707070. And I will also put a link in the chat box if you'd like to support us through that. We appreciate every dollar, and every dollar helps us to fund and prioritize inclusion program at the J. Up next month, we are really excited to continue talking about transition and adult services. We are going to be working with the ARC. Adam Kubler's coming in, Josh Bornstein from Project Search at Overlook Medical Center, and Lauren Merritt, who is from College Steps, who sponsored this fantastic program tonight. And this program is being sponsored by Freeman Law Offices. So we really hope that you'll come back and join us and learn more about supported vocation, learn more about the Project Search program, and about Lauren's College Steps program at Kane. These are really incredible programs in our local area and also throughout the state. So thank you so much for taking your time and for joining us tonight. Again, if you have questions, please reach out. Email is the best way to reach me. And if you'd like to hop on our listserv and get notifications for future events, or if you'd like any of the information from tonight's webinar and you're already not receiving emails from us, please send me an email. We'll get you all the information. I would also encourage you to check back in a few days for our JCC website, which is www.jccnj.org. And this recording will be up, and we will try to also post those resources for you. Dawn, thank you so much. I can't even begin to say how much I appreciate the work that SPAN does. I was fortunate enough to go through your SEVA and SRP training. If anyone is interested in learning more about being an advocate, I would look on the website and get information. It is absolutely an incredible resource. So And thank you so much. We are so thrilled to have you. And we really appreciate your expertise and all of the incredible resources that you've given us tonight.
My pleasure. Happy to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next month. Take care.